So, thank you very much. Nice to see you both. Last 20 years, and obviously more recently, but the distinction between film, TV, video, and more recently the multimedia platforms, as we were saying earlier on, digitization is blurring the boundaries. Do you think that essentially television will disappear? Are we kind of working towards convergence here, or will there always be a defined market for each? Jonathan, perhaps you first of all might like to share that with us.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I work mainly in music, multicam music shows. So for us, the sort of last 5 years, the big shift has been towards YouTube anyway. Pretty much, I would say 90% of my work is delivered the next day after the edit, straight onto YouTube, where it's immediate for the music fans who want to see it. But as well as that, I work on shows like Life from Abbey Road for Channel 4, so there's always that sort of dual delivery. But what I think is happening now is that a lot of the producers are thinking beyond broadcast now. So the work I do for labels has always been for YouTube. I think now producers of TV shows are starting to look at that as a viable alternative to broadcast. And now I've just done a pilot for a jazz show, which is a 12-part show, and now they're talking about even not, it might be that doesn't go to broadcast and it ends up on somewhere like Netflix or... Right. Recently, Amazon have started doing their own production. So there's different delivery formats now. I think producers are aware that broadcast isn't the be-all and end-all as it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, Richard, I don't know how much work you've done. Obviously, film is one angle for what you've done. Have you done very much in the sort of broadcast and TV area?
I have, yeah. I mean, gaming's something that I've done a lot in. I mean, as I said earlier, a lot of the people I work with come from the gaming industry, and I'm one of the people that shoot a lot of the action scenes for some of those big games, so I participate in that. But certainly, as I said about my film earlier, New Sound Killers, it was created as a multi-platform vehicle for it to slip into the world of gaming, for it to have maybe an online series attached to it, to take these characters and take their world further. So certainly everything we approach now, we're not just looking at it thinking, would this be a good feature film? We're thinking, could we get an audiobook out of this? Could we get a game out of this? Could we get more? Could we squeeze as much juice? I say that with as little cynicism as I possibly can, because you've got a viable product that would work in different platforms. For example, the new film Helter Skelter, which is a story of, as I said earlier, two men dueling for each other's kidney. We've already developed the game model for that, and we're going to do a boutique game that will be $1 a hit, right. And then the game will evolve, and so that's already ongoing as we speak. So television is actually something I don't even think about anymore. It's not that viable to the world that I'm participating with, and I find television generally something that is a kind of passive source. It doesn't really excite me anymore. And I think there's a real danger with television of it just slipping into a kind of weird world where it's almost like, certainly in the UK, because most of it's public funded, remember, BBC and Channel 4, it's all public money that, mostly public money that source these two machines, that they become kind of irrelevant, and they've got to find a way of making themselves relevant. And that's a difficult place for them all at the moment.
Do you think it's a generational thing in that case, in terms of the fact that our generation is used to watching television, the box in the corner of the room, therefore we still kind of revert to that. Many of us still revert to that. But as we start looking at younger generation and embracing media on the go, that the television will begin to sort of lose its relevance, Jonathan?
I hope not. I mean,
so do I.
The projects I always love doing are the broadcast ones.
Why is that?
I don't know really. I mean, it just gives me a buzz to think that there's people watching it, especially Life from Abbey Road, which has gone, I think, to over 140 countries globally via TV. That I don't know. There's just something about the fact that it feels higher end, and
you get paid.
You do get paid, yeah. That's always good. But I think definitely, especially with music, you're talking about sort of 3 or 4. Minute segments for pop promos and stuff like that. That's definitely the way of YouTube and telephones now, and you have to accept that that's the way the kids watch it. I mean, we did a 4-minute sort of behind-the-scenes thing for One Direction, and within 2 days it had like 3 million hits on YouTube, and we just couldn't. That wouldn't have done anything on TV, you know.
But in terms of monetizing that, I mean, is that still a challenge, finding viable business models when we start taking broadcast quality footage and start putting it on platforms such as YouTube?
Well, that is the problem. I mean, you know, the safe area, the thing that Jonathan likes, is that it really is that. It comes down to you're doing a high-quality product and you're getting paid for it. There's lots of people out there doing high-quality product and they're not being paid for it because it's going straight on. There's a kind of advertising force. But, I mean, that's the new way of going about it. I think you can actually do something that's very provocative, put it on a new medium and get the advertising revenue, of course, from YouTube because they now have to pay.
Yeah.
And it's about time. Like, for example, I made the film The Journey about sex trafficking. There was not a broadcaster in the land would touch it. But, you know, it's had nearly 2 million hits on YouTube. And, you know, so if you could encourage an advertiser to participate with that, you could monetize that quite easily.
I think, sorry, the only concern for me about that sort of thing is then you get producers who start talking about trying to make a clip on YouTube about a kid biting another kid's finger or stuff like that, you know, that they know have got 2 million hits. And then it becomes a bit more cynical in terms of what... You know, they sort of go into it with a view of getting hits rather than the actual quality of the product, which I think is definitely something to worry about.
On the subject of monetization, Vimeo, YouTube recently started bringing to the market more monetization methods, you know, with micropayments or being able to subscribe to channels and stuff. Do you think that might be the way forward, where it's kind of still curated content like broadcast and you are paying a bit for it? But it's online, the distribution model is different.
Well, I think certainly there are big companies who are really trying to address this at the moment. I know that Xbox, for example, through Microsoft, they're about to launch their own TV channel, and it's going to be highly interactive. It's going to be a mixture of children's television where they can interact with the various characters and situations on that flat screen.
So this is proper interactive television?
Absolutely, totally interactive television. And of course, and they're also talking to people like myself about creating more dynamic characters that have an edge, that have a, you know, that have a holy grail, something that they're looking for or after that actually might hook people in. And how do you do that? And again, that's an area that we've kind of been looking at for the last decade about how to work these characters that we're creating that work very well in the linear narrative of cinema, which I love, I might add. It's not going to go away, but also might work in a more disparate, the world of a kind of gaming, interactive television.
I want to park me on that thing about cinema not going away, because I want to talk about that in a second as well in the context of television not going away. But that really excites me. I've got a daughter, a 3.5-year-old, and
Don't show any of my stuff then.
No. But what she does watch, and this is something I've written about as well, and I'm sure other parents in the audience who've got kids of a certain age might be able to relate to this as well, is that I've got an iPad and she's got, am I allowed to mention? In the Night Garden, I've mentioned it, there we go. And you can move around Iggle-Piggle and Upsy-Daisy on the screen, and my daughter was used to doing that on the screen. And then she started watching it on our big television at home, and she wanted to start moving the characters around on the television, and she couldn't do it, and she found that incredibly frustrating. And it's, like you say, it's the way that we produce traditional linear television, but different distribution models, different thinking, like a bit about what you're talking about here, would enable a lot more of that interactivity and immersion with the characters.
Well, it already exists. I mean, it's already, in the States already, you know, they're already piloting these programs through Microsoft, and it's going to happen. And the kids stuff is the essential area to start, because they're the ones like your daughter who want to go and immediately have some kind of, you know, much more physical communication with the characters. And they're not passive, because the children, you know, they are actually alive and they feel that the thing in front of them is also alive. So therein lies the philosophical difference. You know, they're already geared up and ready to go for this. And as I say, then they're trying to work out how you can motivate a much more cynical adult audience into that world. Well, you know, a high proportion of that cynical adult audience are already gamers, so it's not going to be hard to bring them into a virtual world that is kind of pretended in front of you that it's kind of real and you're participating with it. But I think the people who are much more tuned into television as a informative, but passive experience, things like documentaries, really like the wonderful panoramas or whatever on the Hillsborough tragedy, which was on the other week. I mean, that's television at its best still, you know, really remarkable television. And you don't want to interact with that. You want the information coming at you. So does that have a place? Of course, it will always have a place.
It's provocative. You're active in as much as it's provoking, and you're learning from it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's information-based. It's information that's journalistically led, and it's if we lose that, I mean, it's, you know, don't get me wrong. The BBC are one of the most important institutions in the world, because in a country like we have, if you get rid of the BBC, you know, the upstairs from where we are right now, the Guardian, you know, I don't know how much longer they'll survive. And we need that moderate voice, because otherwise, you know, the media falls into the hands of people that we all know, and it'd be a really dangerous place. So it's a very important institution in the sense of information-led news, as an information-led news agency. Whether it's going to have a place in the world of what we call entertainment is another matter. I don't think they probably should have a place in that. They should just move out of that and leave all of us in this room to take control of our own TV channels, because that's really what it's going to become, and feed it into this incredibly enormous world that we're creating, full of, you know, fairly abstract, wonderful linear things.
Okay.
Or non-linear things, sorry. Not linear.
Yeah. Okay, bit of a change of tack. Jonathan, 4K. Is this something you're working with already? And is it something that, if you're not working with, you see as being a bit of a game changer?
We're definitely not working with it at the moment. We are, because most of the productions I work on are multi-camera performance shows, then obviously budget's a major factor in that, and having sort of four or five cameras, all 4K capable, would be a drain. So we actually, believe it or not, are still working on 5Ds, because mainly for two reasons: budget issues, but also for the intimacy that those cameras can get, and how close we can get in at Abbey Road Studios to the bands. Sure. So it's not really something I've seen much of. No doubt with like the Blackmagic camera and stuff like that, it will start to seep through into music. And music promos will be using it. That's not an issue, because they're mostly single camera.
Who's going to see it, though? I mean, who's going to watch it? I mean, you know, 3D television has been an absolute disaster. And anybody with a brain would have known that was going to happen, that the majority of people were not going to buy into sitting in that experience with a pair of glasses on. It's just not going to happen.
You'll find sit on the fence here.
And it didn't happen. Well, it's not happened. Yeah. I mean, it's just not happened. Let's be realistic and honest about it. 4K.
It's a gimmick, isn't it?
It's a gimmick, but 4K is also a gimmick. Who's going to have an 85-inch television in their front room? You know what I mean? It's just not going to happen. And also, you know, I thought we all lived in a new, much more ecocentric world where we were aware of the kind of amount of power we were using, and, you know, our attitude to the world around us. And, you know, we suddenly come up with 4K so we can watch it in our homes with an 85-inch screen. I mean, it's, you know, it's bordering on a kind of consumer obscenity, I think. It's just insanity. And they're completely out of touch with reality.
I don't disagree. I think there are certainly some challenges with 4K, and I see if we prove wrong with that or not. But certainly there does seem to be a big push from the people who make televisions, who make the displays, as there was with 3D, as there was with flat panel and full HD and so on. Now, I'm aware we saw some of your work earlier on, but actually, Jonathan, we didn't see any of your work yet. Now, I think we've actually got a VT queued up just to show us a little bit about some of the work that you've been working on recently. Let's take a look.
Just keep ticking over before you know
interesting you were saying about screen sizes. We've got a 40-inch, 45-inch monitor or something here, and, you know, how many hundreds of inches. We were still turning around looking at this one rather than a little one there. You had something you wanted to say about the film?
No, I just thought it really feels quite intimate, and I think he's done a really miraculous job of doing the impossible, because I think filming bands is really difficult. You watch kind of live broadcasts at Glastonbury or whatever, they never really get what it's really like being at the gig. But I think using that environment is inspired, and using those cameras in that way is really fantastic. I think it really works really well. What's 4K going to make? How's that going to make that better?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, as I say, we've gone down to 5D, so we're not sort of hung up on resolution sizes, and we've had a battle to even use those cameras. But you know, the reason we've used them, I think you can see there, is it allows us to get in close and personal with. And it was a director, Matthew Amos. It was his decision to switch to them. We had been using other cameras, and I think it's really paid off in the look of it.
It's good low light as well, and you've got some really low textures in there in the studio. Yeah. Terrific. Well, ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm thank you to Richard Jobson and Jonathan Walton. Thank you, gents.